In the spring of 2018, the world was buzzing with one name, Beyoncé. The global superstar was preparing for what would later become one of the most iconic performances in modern music history, Beychella, her headlining set at the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival. Stay in the spotlight. Hit like and subscribe for more untold celebrity stories. But behind the glamour, the flawless choreography, and the dazzling stage designs was a woman pushing her body to its absolute limit. What the world didn't know at the time was that in the weeks leading up to Coachella, Beyoncé had secretly collapsed from exhaustion after an intense rehearsal, leaving her entire team in shock and forcing her to face one of the most terrifying moments of her career. This is the true story of the night Beyoncé collapsed, the emotional aftermath, and how she transformed that near disaster into one of the greatest comebacks the world has ever seen. Beyoncé wasn't just performing at Coachella. She was rewriting history. In 2018, she became the first Black woman to ever headline the Coachella Festival, a monumental moment that carried enormous weight. Every detail, every step, every note mattered. For Beyoncé, perfection wasn't an option, it was the only way. She had recently given birth to twins Rumi and Sir Carter, less than a year earlier, and her body was still recovering. During her Netflix documentary Homecoming, she later revealed, "I was a woman that felt like my body was not mine. I had to rebuild myself, physically and emotionally." Her schedule was grueling: 14-hour rehearsals, strict dieting, and daily choreography sessions with dozens of dancers. Her creative vision demanded authenticity, a show that honored Black culture, historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and the beauty of Black excellence. But behind that drive for brilliance was an exhaustion that was quietly breaking her down. It was a late night in March 2018, just weeks before the Coachella stage lights would shine on her again. The rehearsal space in Los Angeles was alive with sound, drums pounding, horns blaring, dancers counting out steps. Beyoncé stood center stage, her eyes focused, body tense, as she went through Crazy in Love for what must have been the 50th time that night. "Let's do it again," she said, waving to her choreographer. Her voice was calm but firm. Her team exchanged glances. They knew she'd been pushing herself for weeks, barely eating, barely sleeping. But no one dared to tell her to stop. She was Beyoncé, the embodiment of discipline and excellence. As the music started again, Beyoncé threw herself into the choreography. Every movement was sharp, precise, and full of energy. But halfway through the run, something changed. Her breathing quickened. Her steps grew heavy. Then, everything went black. Beyoncé collapsed to the floor. For a few seconds, no one moved. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the speakers. Then chaos erupted. "Call 911. Someone shouted. "Get her some water," another screamed. Her husband, Jay-Z, who had arrived midway through rehearsal to support her, rushed to her side. Baby, wake up," he whispered, his voice shaking. Beyoncé was semi-conscious, her breathing shallow. The room filled with fear, not just for the artist, but for the woman everyone adored. The paramedics arrived quickly, and after checking her vitals, they confirmed she was suffering from severe exhaustion and dehydration. Jay-Z helped her onto a stretcher, his hand never leaving hers. The Queen of Music, the most powerful performer in the world, was being carried out of her own rehearsal studio, fragile, pale, and silent. That image haunted everyone who witnessed it. Doctors ordered Beyoncé to halt all rehearsals for at least a week and undergo strict medical supervision. Her body had been pushed to the brink, her blood pressure was dangerously low, and she had lost weight at an alarming rate due to her intense diet. At home, surrounded by her family, Beyoncé lay in bed, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't crying from pain, she was crying from fear. Fear that she might not be ready. Fear that her body might betray her again. Fear that she would fail to deliver on the promise of something historic. In her own words later, she admitted, "I was just trying to be the best mother and the best performer. But it was too much. I had to learn to listen to my body again." Jay-Z and her mother, Tina Knowles Lawson, became her emotional anchors. They reminded her that greatness meant nothing without health, and that she didn't have to prove her worth through suffering. But Beyoncé wasn't one to give up easily. After days of rest, meditation, and quiet reflection, she made a decision. She would not cancel Coachella. She would come back, stronger, smarter, and spiritually grounded. Something changed in Beyoncé after that collapse. Before, she had been chasing perfection. Afterward, she began chasing purpose. Her recovery became a spiritual journey. She incorporated yoga, plant-based meals, and meditation into her daily routine. She worked closely with her medical team to regain her strength naturally, balancing intense rehearsals with recovery sessions. She stopped comparing her new body to her old one. She stopped hiding her vulnerabilities. She started embracing her humanity, not as a weakness, but as her source of power. That inner transformation poured into her performance. Every song she rehearsed carried deeper meaning. When she sang Freedom, it wasn't just a hit single, it was her anthem of resilience. April 14, 2018, Indio, California. The crowd of nearly 125,000 people waited in anticipation. The desert air buzzed with energy. Fans waved homemade signs, phones were raised, and the stage lights glowed in Beyoncé's signature gold. Backstage, Beyoncé stood quietly, eyes closed, hands trembling slightly. She whispered a short prayer, thanking God for the strength to stand, to sing, to be alive. Then the opening notes of Crazy in Love hit. Beyoncé rose on stage like a goddess in a shimmering Egyptian-inspired outfit. The crowd erupted. It wasn't just a performance, it was a cultural event, a declaration of Black pride, womanhood, and artistry. Every move was electric, every note flawless. The marching band, the dancers, the costume changes. It was perfection beyond expectation. No one watching that night could have imagined that just weeks earlier, she had collapsed, unable to move. When the performance ended, social media exploded. Beyoncé didn't just perform, she made history. Queen Bey changed Coachella forever. The performance became known worldwide as Beychella. Critics called it a cultural renaissance. Fans called it divine. And Beyoncé herself? She called it a celebration of strength. But when she returned backstage, she didn't celebrate. She cried, tears of gratitude. She hugged Jay-Z and whispered, "We did it." She had transformed pain into power, weakness into wonder, and a collapse into a resurrection. In later interviews, Beyoncé admitted that her Coachella journey was both her proudest and most humbling experience. It was the most physically demanding thing I've ever done. I had to rebuild my body and my confidence. But it taught me balance, that even when you're a queen, you must take care of yourself first. Her collapse became a wake-up call not just for her, but for millions of fans who idolized her. It was a reminder that behind perfection is pain, behind glory is grit, and even icons are human. From that night forward, Beyoncé restructured her work-life balance. She learned to say no when her health was at risk, and to embrace help without shame. Her story became a silent message to every dreamer. Greatness isn't just about how hard you push, but how deeply you rest. Years later, Beychella remains one of the most legendary performances in music history, studied in universities, dissected in documentaries, and celebrated in pop culture. But behind that glory lies the night Beyoncé collapsed, a night that changed her life forever. It was the night she learned that true strength isn't measured by how long you stand, but by how gracefully you rise when you fall. Beyoncé didn't just survive that collapse. She turned it into the heartbeat of her legacy. And that's why, when the lights dim and the music fades, Beyoncé remains more than a superstar. She is a symbol of perseverance, purpose, and power. Thanks for watching.